So for years, American customers have been buying really, really cheap Chinese goods. And part of what made them so cheap is they don't pay any tariffs or any taxes when they import goods that are worth less than $800 into America. All this is going to change on May 2nd. The Trump administration has gotten rid of a rule that allowed them to come into the country duty free. And this has big implications for some Chinese companies that have been making a killing on selling American consumers cheap Chinese goods. And those companies are Shein and Temu.
So, Don, just lay this out for us. Explain to me why Shein and Temu are so important in China and to ordinary consumers.
Well, they're some of the biggest retailers in the world now. Just to put this into perspective, 7 years ago, thereabouts, no one had really heard of Shein. And then by 2022, it had become the biggest fast fashion retailer in the world. Temu, on the other hand, launched in late 2022, and now it is caught up with Shein in terms of its revenues. So yeah, we're talking about very, very large companies. At one point, Shein was valued at about $100 billion. That valuation, of course, has fallen as the trade war has picked up and it's faced more geopolitical problems. The way they operate is they sell things over apps that people use on their phones. They're kind of gamified, so they keep people hooked and scrolling, and they are incredibly cheap as well. So people end up buying lots of stuff as they shop. So this is why they're important in America. If you look at China, a lot of Chinese people haven't even heard of these companies. And that's because they don't sell in China, but they manufacture in China. And essentially here they are a big employer. So these companies are very important on both sides of the Pacific.
So explain to me, Don, exactly how these Chinese retailers are able to sell so much to American consumers.
First of all, these Chinese retailers, they have very low costs in China. They're very efficient, and they produce things that end up being really cheap. But another key part of this is when they come into the US, there's no tariffs paid on these. American consumers open up their phones, they open up the Shein or Temu app, they buy something, and these goods are shipped via air cargo directly to their homes. So they don't go into warehouses in the US. They don't need to be shipped on boats that cross the Pacific. And this keeps costs down. And it has been incredibly efficient for everyone involved. The US customers have been able to buy things that, should cost a lot more if you're shopping even at Walmart, where prices are already low. And for the Chinese companies, they've made a lot of money off of this over the past 5 years.
And why are Trump's tariffs so affecting these sorts of Chinese companies?
The actions that the Trump administration have taken home in on these specific companies and this specific channel, which is called the de minimis exemption. So what these de minimis exemptions relate to are goods entering the US through the Postal Service that are worth less than $800. Up until May 2nd, there wouldn't be any tariffs, any taxes applied to them. After May 2nd, this is going to have a big impact on super cheap products that compete on price. Consumers will really have to foot the cost for a lot of these tariffs when the goods come into the country.
So what's the answer? Can these Chinese companies simply sell to consumers elsewhere in the world?
They can, and they've been trying to do this for a while. So the idea of getting rid of this exemption has been out there for a long time. There's been a lot of interest groups that have been pushing for it. It's not like Shein and Temu didn't know that there was a threat to their business model in America. So they have been trying to sell to Europe, but it's thought that Shein probably sells about 30% of its products in the US. Temu sells about 40% in the US. So yeah, it's not easy to suddenly diversify away from America.
So if Shein and Temu aren't actually selling to Chinese consumers, couldn't they just base themselves outside China and get around these tariffs?
They can. In fact, Shein and Temu have been trying to make themselves much less Chinese, so to speak. Shein has moved its headquarters to Singapore. Temu says that it's a Boston-based company, but it's very hard to move your entire supply chain outside of China, especially when manufacturing in China is one of the things that keeps prices down in the first place. So if you want to move to Vietnam or to Cambodia and try manufacturing your goods there, you're going to face higher costs, higher logistics costs, higher input costs. So it's not easy just to uproot from southern China, where these companies are based. And the Chinese government is not happy when they see some of the suppliers of these companies moving to places like Vietnam. And, they've signaled that they're not happy with this. There was a report out recently that the Ministry of Commerce was telling Shein not to let its suppliers move to other countries. The government of Guangzhou, where a lot of Shein activity takes place, has come out and said publicly that a diversification and a relocation isn't happening. So they're very sensitive to this, and they don't want to see more jobs disappear from China to other places in Asia.
And of course, these are only two of the companies that are facing these huge tariffs, which are affecting all of Chinese trade. How is the Chinese government now responding to the kind of wavering of Trump's tariffs elsewhere?
Well, they're not happy to see what appears like a ganging up on China. So, of course, now the Trump administration's tariffs are focused on China, and Trump is trying to strike deals with all these other countries. Part of the deal making has to be putting up walls and keeping Chinese products out. If the Trump administration can't do that, then products can simply be rerouted through third countries or sold to third countries and then sold to America. So China's not happy to see what looks like a trade war focused directly at it.
And will companies like Shein and Temu survive this?
I think these companies will survive. I think they will be forced to diversify more. And that means doing more sourcing, doing more manufacturing outside of China and selling to other places like Europe, South America, Southeast Asia. But in the end, I think this will actually make the companies more like multinationals and less Chinese, which is what they've been saying they want to do all along. So Trump may actually push them into becoming more like multinationals.